Good morning, back on camera. It's not my favourite place to be, but never mind. I'll try and keep this relatively quick because I know I have a tendency to waffle on. But usually my survey is a little bit awkward. There's plenty to show you as well, so it often means there's a lot to talk about. Anyhow, I'm surveying this mid-terrace property in York this morning, and it's a relatively recent purchase, and at the time of purchase there was a level 2 home buyers survey undertaken, and one of the recommendations from that was further investigation by a damp specialist. Now that specialist unfortunately wasn't me, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the information from the two reports and see how that information conflicts each other, and then I'm just going to show you what we've seen as we've been walking around the building. So this is the level 2 home buyers survey here, and you can see where metered internally, high moisture readings were obtained, indicating that the damp proof course has failed. There you go, recommend separate report. This is said separate report, and what we've got here, we put, upon inspection, look, no moisture readings were recorded directly above the skirting boards to indicate that the DPC had broken down. Salt contaminated and defective plaster was found to a number of areas, mainly in the hallway, living room, about 900 mil above floor level. No moisture meter readings were recorded directly adjacent to these areas, which would be caused by failure of the DPC. So they're suggesting that this problem is the result of inappropriate plaster. There you go, the defective plaster is removed and reinstated. So one's saying the damp proof course has failed, the other one's saying the damp proof course hasn't failed and this is just a plaster problem. Let me just show you what we can see here. So spin us around. Vestibule and hall. We've got damage, extensive cracking, delamination of the plaster here. Note that's about 700 mil above floor level. You've got the same here on the lounge internal dividing wall, and similarly here. At the reveal of the vestibule door, we've got salts bleeding through behind the door casing, and I just take some moisture readings from the door casing here. I should have turned that on first. You'll note they're high. Okay. Moving through into the hall, we've got some cracking of the plaster here. Very typical of cracking that happens at the interface between new and old plaster, but you'll notice the base of the wall is relatively free from any spoiling or distress on this side. However, so look at the casing at the bottom. You can see there's some damage here to the paintwork, and let's measure the moisture content of that casing. There, that's 30% moisture content. Now I've already completed my survey, so you will see with some areas where there's some disturbance to the walls, etc. So let's have a look here. We've got extensive delamination of the plaster and salting here. Some jacking of the plaster from the wall with salts behind, very typical of cryptoefflorescence. For those of you that don't know what cryptoefflorescence is, that's salts crystallizing behind the material, usually caused by materials on the surface which are impermeable, or by salts building up in the capillary pores. So you can see the same here, we've got salts bleeding through the plaster around about 1 metre above internal floor level, with this damp staining above and below. You've got further evidence of that here and here. If we look at the newel post, you can see we've got a wear up decay, weevil in the newel, got damaged plaster here at the base of the wall, corrosion plaster beads. But again, you look at the bottom of the wall, it appears relatively dry, free from cosmetic damage, with all of the damage located around here. So you can, I assume most people will immediately be thinking, salt band. We've got a little bit more damage here above the dado rail. Now, these holes in the wall, they're what I've drilled there because we've taken a full gravimetric profile from that wall to understand what's going on. We're going to have a look at the stair string. So we see there's lots of moisture in the stair string here, and before I cut away the skirting boards here, you can actually see some distress in the skirting boards, and again, when we tested those, there were very high moisture values in the skirting, and because I've cut that off already, I'll turn that over. You can see we've got a lot of moisture here building up at the floor and wall interface. You can see that this tile floor is a replacement. There's the DPM at the floor and wall interface. This is a new cementitious render and gypsum skin which has been reinstated, and you can see there's some grey material on the bottom of the wall where it's salting here. That appears to be a cementitious tanking membrane. Let's move around. I would actually just like to show you some of the damage in here. We've got very similar symptoms, extensive damage just at this door reveal here. Very high moisture levels in the skirting boards here. And if we're looking at the dining room internal dividing wall, no visible damage, distress to the plaster at the base of the wall. However, when we pop up there, we've got a lovely isolated damp patch of stained plasterwork here. That's about 900 millimeters above internal floor level. Moving through into the dining room, this is the opposite side of that wall. You can see we've got extensive cracking of the plaster finish. That's very typical of a very hard cementitious render with a high cement content, usually due to shrinkage, or that could be slipping of the plaster where that tanking material has been applied to the wall. Thus you've got very poor adhesion between the plaster finish and the structure. Again, you can see some damp staining in the plaster data reel, and discoloration here and here. Again, when you test all these areas, we're getting, where's my meter gone? 1 second. There it is. So we test these areas, we get high readings from these, but absolutely nothing where the plaster's been reinstated. Okay, unless you then start to scan the wall, and you'll notice you've got a full profile here. You'll notice I've cut away the skirting boards there too, and we've taken a sample from that wall. We start to look at some of the other walls. We've got gripped reflorescent salts here, blowing or jacking the plaster off the wall here and here. Note the height. That's about 900 millimeters above floor level. No evidence of distress to the plaster at the base of the wall, although when we do start to scan the wall, we get very high readings all the way up to about 1.3 meters. Similarly here, high moisture levels in the plaster beads. We've got some isolated dampness just beneath the windowsill of the dining room here, although not externally. This sill here is rotten where the cables enter in. We've got more damage in the corner of the dining room here, in this back corner, which migrates into this cupboard. Now the profile and height of these readings here actually reduce outwards from this corner across the rear wall and back into the chimney recess cupboard towards the front, but you can see we've actually got a little bit of mould there on the back of the door, suggesting that there is an issue with humidity in that cupboard, most likely encouraged by the damp we can see in the structure. Moving through, again, we've got very high moisture levels in the door casings here and here. We've taken these skirting boards off. We've had a sample from that wall. We've taken another sample from that wall there. I'll just show you. We've had a look in the let's see if we can get under there. Can I get under there? Can you see? We've got a lot of expanding foam on this floor and wall interface. Exactly why that's there, I don't know. So I'm unable to determine if there is a damp-proof membrane beneath that concrete floor. So, a couple of omissions, things that I haven't told you. Well, get rid of that. Somebody's ringing me. First of all, upon purchase, there was an escape of water from the neighbour on the right. Significant, I think it was a mains water leak. This building wasn't assessed as part of that escape of water event. The damage that you're seeing throughout this building is pretty significant. The profiles all extend to about 1.3 metres above floor level. There is evidence of salt bands in the walls, very high salt bands for a property of this period. The house wasn't built with a damp-proof course, but there's evidence of several chemical DPC repairs in the walls externally. So you can see there's a more recent silane siloxane diffusal cream system here, and water-based siliconate or spirit-based injection in the walls there. The problem is that when this property was purchased, The advice provided in the level 2 survey just suggested that there was evidence that the damp-proof course has failed. Now, looking at this is clearly not a DPC failure, and secondly, the property wasn't built with a DPC anyway, unless they're referring to failure of the retrofit works. But that's typical of what we get in a level 2 survey. It's a standard paragraph. Nobody bothers to amend it or expand upon what they've actually found to say, look, this building looks like it's got some severe problems. It's essential really that you get this investigated, particularly prior to purchase. But they have made a recommendation to undertake further investigation, so omitted from any liability there, I suspect. And then we look at the report that was undertaken by the apparent damp specialist. Now, this it's pretty clear when you start to look at the moisture content, the joinery, the plaster beads, the skirting boards, the door casings, and investigate that this is not a plaster problem, and that would have been really obvious at the time. But nobody did any investigation. This company has no industry accreditation. He's got nobody to answer to. The guy has some qualifications that he's obtained from the PCA, but it's not a PCA accredited company, so they're not audited. And as a result, this client's been given some very bad advice, and had they have just taken this plaster away and replastered it with something else, that repair would have inevitably failed. And as you can see, this is quite extensive, meaning that would have incurred some considerable costs. Now, I've taken lots of samples from around this building, in addition to a full gravimetric profile on the right party dividing wall. So that analysis will give us a little bit more of an indication. But initially, all the symptoms that we see throughout this building suggest multiple attempts at prior repair, with profiles exaggerated towards the right party dividing wall, diminishing towards the left. That would likely suggest that most of this damage is the result of an escape of water event. I have tested water services in this building as well, and they're not from a leaking service in this building, so they're likely the beneficiary of a problem in a neighbouring property, which isn't unusual for an old terrace. But yeah, I just want to demonstrate how important it is to make sure that you get credible advice from somebody that really understands what they're doing, because if you don't and you get bad or cheap advice on a pre-purchase scenario, this might end up costing you a significant amount of money to repair, investigate and repair at a later stage. Anyway, I did say I try not to waffle on. I've not done a very good job, I do apologise. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Speak soon. Thank you, bye-bye.